I was shamed by an auto shop employee. A couple days ago, I brought my truck into a big chain auto shop for a tire changeover appointment. They said it would be a couple hours for the tire changeover and studding. Well, an hour later a tech calls me to ask where my locking wheel nut key is. They've already checked the center console. Where else would it be? Super confused, I tell him I don't have locking wheel nuts. There are some tools under the backseat driver's side. You could try there, I guess. Also confused why they didn't call me before going through my center console but didn't say anything at this point. Someone else from the shop, initially I assumed was the manager but later found out he was a customer service agent, calls me a half hour later to tell me to come pick up my truck. They can't do anything with it because they can't find the lug nut key. So I said sure. Then, he takes a deep, disappointed breath and tells me, I just thought you should know. My technicians had to go through some unmentionable things to look for this key. Things that are just not at all proper, and it's not right. Just thought you know. What the hell? I just say okay and hang up. A lot is going through my mind at this point, like what could they have possibly found that would warrant such an offended response? Do I really have locking wheel nuts or am I going crazy? I wait until the next day so I can bring my boyfriend with me to pick up my truck, you know, for some backup. When we get there, I unlock my truck with the app and search floor to ceiling to find the items in question. Guys, there was a pair of my underwear in the center console. Nothing in the back seat. I thought about explaining here why there is a pair of my underwear in the center console, but I don't think it's really relevant. Some girls out there might be able to guess. Now, as embarrassing as it is knowing these guys found my underwear and I'd have to go in there and show my face, I knew I had no reason to be embarrassed. Because I checked, and I don't have locking wheel nuts. Even if I did have locking nuts, could they not have called me before they started going through my vehicle? Am I wrong for thinking that? I went inside to speak to the manager who had no idea about any of this. She sent a technician to my truck to confirm that no, I did not have locking wheel nuts, and they did have the tools to remove the nuts in the shop after all if I still wanted to go ahead with it. Then, I told the manager about the embarrassing phone call one of her cashiers or technicians made to me, how inappropriate it was. They had no reason/permission to go through my center console in the first place, so why make a point to embarrass me for what they saw? She agreed, and said she would talk to the employee who made the call. By the way, I'm horrific at confrontation and ended up crying when I was telling her about the phone call because as much as I told myself I had no reason to be embarrassed, there were a lot of customers and employees around who I'm sure were thinking I was crazy. The whole situation truly did upset me, specifically the Pantygate aspect, and I'm glad I decided to stick up for myself and not just keep my mouth shut like I usually would. I'm curious what other women would have done in this situation, and I asked the women since I'm pretty sure if it were a man in my shoes whose underwear they found, they would not have gotten an offended employee calling them to complain. What do you guys think? Comment. My car was acting up, so I took it to a local Firestone. My ex had always taken our cars to Firestone, a different shop, but Firestone, so I thought they were reliable. They fixed the alternator, then told me an axle or something was about to give out and needed replaced for $800. I decided to get a second opinion, and went to a local mechanic that was highly recommended by friends. He said the car was fine. That was 4 years ago and the car is still fine. That guy at Firestone lied to me. Flat out lied. Anytime someone in our local FB group asks for recommendations for a mechanic, I vouch for the honest one and warn against going to that Firestone. I have locking lug nuts on my vehicle. I also don't have a key because the dealer didn't give me one. I'm not a mechanic, so it never occurred to me to buy one. I've never had an issue getting tires in the 9 years I've owned my SUV. If someone had spoken to me like that in my early 20s, I would have had the same response you did. I would have felt shame and embarrassment. Now at 34 they would have got an ass chewing of the century. Then they would have got a second one when I told my husband. Then I would have gotten a deeply discounted tire service if I deigned to allow them to touch my vehicle before calling corporate on their asses. They rifled through your truck? That's a huge no-no. Don't let this one go at the manager. Sounds like you gave them permission to go in to look for the fake key, but they should be embarrassed if finding clean underwear is that big a deal to them. Life must be very hard for them. They shouldn't have been searching in your truck. You should make a call to the corporate office and report it. They have probably done it to many women and need to be called out on it. I would have handled it exactly like you did, right down to, likely, losing it to some degree with the manager. I'm really glad the manager was a woman, though let's hope a male would have also been appropriately dismayed by the staff. Grown men acting like teenagers. Seriously? Don't any of them have wives, girlfriends, mothers, or sisters? If you are up to it, you might consider making more of a formal complaint to higher UPS, to whoever is over the manager you spoke with. Complain the old-fashioned way, in writing is often effective. Maybe they'll give the shop employees some sales/ethics/communication training. When I was a service advisor at a Dodge dealership, when a vehicle had wheel locks, our tech would check the passenger side glove box, and if the tool wasn't in there, they would immediately let me know so I could contact the customer. That was as far as their search ever went, and it was far and few between when this happened. The main point being the auto techs absolutely refused to waste time directing a vehicle to find the security bit. I can't imagine the incompetence to try to tell a customer they couldn't find the bit when there wasn't even locking nuts installed. The bare handful of times where there was an issue, I would ask the owner before ever attempting to dig through anything, and extensive searches were done only after I couldn't find it and the customer told me to search everything. Don't feel bad for a scummy-ass business trying to pull that when it was pure dumbassery from top to bottom. Story 2. I wish I never found out my father cheated. A few months ago, I was scrolling through my mom's phone, and I came across screenshots, pictures, and texts between my father and the woman he was having an affair with around the end of last year. This woman was staying at our house for some time, but had left early and no one ever talked about her again, which was confusing and suspicious, considering my mom never really liked her and often ranted to me about how she was overly friendly and too comfortable around my father. But all of a sudden she quickly changed the subject whenever she was mentioned. I remembered fragments I had heard from their arguments, her telling him to block her and him refusing to do so. I have good reason to believe he started talking to the woman again. For about a month, it was all I could think about, non-stop, 24/7. I dreamt about it when I slept. I feel so betrayed and so hurt. I've always had an aversion to romantic relationships, but this cemented it in my head that any relationship I involve myself in will end in disaster. I've always had a not all men cheat attitude because I thought my father, a man I trusted, would never be capable of it. But now that he's done it, I feel like anyone else could. I know it's unfair and it's a generalization, but it's out of my control. My mother adores my father, and she forgave him instantly, and it breaks my heart to see that he truly could not care less about her. This entire ordeal completely changed my perspective on my father. I never thought him cunning enough to cheat on my mother right in front of her, in their own house. The affair woman had meals with my parents, conversed with them, went on outings with them, and all the while they were having an affair right behind my mother's back. I don't know how to interact with my dad anymore. I feel guilty if I'm disrespectful and passive, but I cannot be friendly and loving to him knowing what he did, so I fluctuate between the two. I haven't told anyone, not even my friends, because I don't want to ruin his image and I don't want them to make assumptions about him or my family in general. I'm so exhausted of carrying this around and I don't know if I even have the right to be upset about this, since it doesn't even directly involve me, and I can't even talk to either of my parents about it because nobody knows that I know. I know my mom would be mortified if I asked her about it, and I know my father would get defensive. This is the only place I could think to say this. I hope you'll excuse how awfully and childishly this is written in the lack of structure, but I really don't want to think about this longer than I have to. I am so upset and hurt and angry and sad, and I have no idea what to do or how to stop being angry. Story 3. My fiancé told me something that's making me look at her differently. Throw away so this doesn't get back to her because she told me that she hasn't told anyone this before and I don't want to accidentally ruin her trust. The other night, my fiancé and I were laying in bed just talking about stuff and she said that for as long as she can remember, whenever she looks at stuff, she sees flashing images of how she would use it to kill someone, or when she looks at someone she sees different ways she would kill them. She then told me that she doesn't really know why she hasn't killed anyone because she doesn't really see a reason not to. And she told me that sometimes she's had to stop herself from wrapping her hands around my throat when we cuddle. She's talked about wanting to kill someone before in, I thought, a joking way, but now I'm kind of not sure. With her telling me that she's had to stop herself from hurting me and doesn't really see a reason not to kill someone, I'm scared something might happen. Besides this, she's honestly a really great partner and I have a history or genuine, actual abuse in relationships and I have my own intrusive thoughts, so I don't want to just leave right away if these are just intrusive thoughts and she doesn't want to actually hurt anybody. Not sure if I need advice or just a place to vent. I needed to get this out for sure though. Update: I promise y'all I'm reading your comments. I just get overwhelmed easily and there's more than I'm used to, haha. To clarify a few things, I'm a woman, and I am a very small one, whereas my fiancé is a very tall individual, even towers over most men. Second, I want to add that when she was telling me this stuff, it was the middle of the night, we were both tired and just sort of speaking our stream of consciousness out loud, and she was really distant and her voice broke a few times when she was talking about it. She also didn't ever outright say she wanted to kill me, just that her brain kind of forced her to imagine it. The incident with her having to stop herself from grabbing my throat in my sleep was months ago according to her. Now for a small update. I did try talking to her and brought up the idea of therapy, and she basically said she didn't want a diagnosis to negatively affect her later, but she'd be willing to go to work on other issues we have, like we're pretty sure she has ADHD. She also elaborated that she doesn't want to kill anyone, she just doesn't always see a reason not to. And she also stressed that she flat out doesn't want to kill me and she loves and cares about me a lot and that's why she won't. I honestly believe she at least wouldn't hurt me because she stopped me from hurting myself a few times. I have chronic suicidal thoughts and sometimes they just get to me. She also said that the reason she even told me was because she wanted to open up to me about something she hasn't told anyone. And she wanted to show me that people can work on themselves and get better. I'm not really sure where to go from here because she got really upset when I tried pushing for therapy because I'm not really in a good position to leave/break up with her. Moving back in with my family isn't an option and there's no way I could afford to live in an apartment by myself. And I also can't drive. All I can really do now is wait it out. If things get worse, I know of a few women's shelters nearby, but I'm not really in immediate danger, so I don't know if they'd take me.